Hello and welcome to the Pots and Trowels podcast with me, Martin Fish, Jill and Sean.
Hi.
Hello.
Well, Jill and I have been out and about this week. Sorry, Sean, we couldn't take you with us. We will next year.
Here we go again.
But we've been to the Lincolnshire Show there and we've got some highlights of the people we were chatting to there.
And every week on the podcast, we try to answer your listeners' questions. We've got a listeners' question coming up on camelia. And also, Jill's got a lovely, delicious recipe to do with spring onions. So keep listening if you were interested.
Yeah, I love a spring onion. But Martin met up with a couple of the exhibitors at the Lincolnshire Show. And first of all, he was chatting to Terry from Primrose Bank.
Well, Terry, congratulations because you have won Best in Show at the Lincolnshire Show for your wonderful display of lovely shrubs and herbaceous perennials. It looks amazing, doesn't it?
Yeah, thank you very much, yes.
It does, yes. And so much colour on it. I think that's the effect everybody wants to create, that lovely sort of quintessential English garden.
Yeah.
Is that difficult to create, that type of thing? Because that's the style you tend to do, is it?
It is, yeah, but I tend to have my granny here helping me on the, the day beyond build-up, and she has that bit of an eye with being a bit older.
So Sue,
Sue's,
Sue
yes,
and
is
you
my
and Sue are
partner,
your
yes.
partner. You and Sue are Primrose Bank Nurseries.
Yes.
So Sue is a horticulturist, always worked in horticulture, but
Yes.
you didn't start in horticulture,
No,
did you?
I didn't start. I was from the fire service.
Yes.
Retired at 55, thought I was going to have a lovely life, and went from 2 days, 2 nights, 4 days off, to working 7 days and no time off.
Oh, that's marvellous. That's retirement for you, isn't it?
Yes, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
And no pay.
Oh, I think we've got the red arrows flying over. Look at that. The fly passed by the red arrows.
Yeah, very
right
nice.
on time as well for this. Perfect. But before the fire service, I think you also, weren't you in the horse trade?
I was. I used to buy and sell horses. Yeah.
So you know all the jockeys and all of that.
Yeah. Which Sue don't like to talk about.
Okay.
You dealt with different kind of people. Shall
Okay.
we
Well,
say.
we'll move swiftly
Yes,
on to the
swiftly on.
nursery. So Primrose Bank Nursery, you're in Kexby near York. So the nursery you do open at times, don't you?
We do open, yes. It's on Facebook and that when we're open.
And people can
and
have a
that.
look around the
Yeah,
garden
they
you've
can,
created
yes.
as well. So you're known for your unusual perennials, aren't you? And I know you're not the grower, Sue is the
No,
grower, but
Sue.
you're here at the Lincolnshire Show. What sort of plants have been going here? Here we are, the end of June. What are people buying?
Well, they're buying the more unusual ones. The salvias, there's quite a range now of really nice coloured ones. And they are hardy if you don't cut them down.
Right.
Mulch them for the winter and leave all the growth on.
So cutting them down, I suppose, exposes them to the frost. So you
It-
leave all the growth on and trim them in the spring.
It does, yes,
Yeah.
yeah, and they survive then.
Yeah.
And they're good for taking cuttings.
Yeah, exactly. But then people wouldn't come back and buy any more of them.
Well, they do. They're probably not as good as Sue at taking cuttings.
Okay, right. And you always have lovely hydrangeas, and it looks like you've more or less sold out, but you always have a good range. And the two on your stand, we're looking at the back of the stand now,
Oh, Runaway Bride.
I couldn't remember its name. So that one is a white one, and it's quite a nice sort of lacy one, but that one just flowers and flowers,
It
doesn't it?
flowers most of the summer. It's one that you don't prune for the first 3 years, and
Right.
then you just keep it in shape. It gets quite large, and it is nice.
Yeah, it is lovely, that one,
Yeah.
isn't it? And I noticed on your stand here you've got some little roses, because you have a mix of all, like you say,
We do.
unusual things. What's this? I mean, it's a tiny little rose. They're only about
Yeah,
the size of your
sweetie
thumbnail.
pie.
Sweetie pie.
Yeah,
Can we have a look at
it-
that? Let's,
yeah.
So that is it. That is looks like a true miniature.
Yeah, it is a true miniature. It's mainly for the rockery.
Right.
It gets to no bigger than like a football, a small football,
Okay.
and you can shape it to nearly perfectly round.
Right, and the flowers are literally fingernail size, aren't they? Look
They're
like
really
a wild
tiny.
rose,
Flowers
aren't
most of the summer period
Yeah.
in flower.
they? And what's it called again?
Sweetie pie.
Sweetie pie. Is that fairly new?
It new last year.
Oh right, yeah, I've seen that before. So no, I mean you've got some really unusual plants. Looks like it's been blitzed by the public here, buying from you.
Very busy day yesterday. Sun was shining, a bit like today.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's been very nice here.
yeah. Well, I hope you have a busy day today, and when you get back, I'm sure Sue will find you another job to do.
next year. I'll be loading up tonight on the in the dark.
There you go for your next event.
For the next event.
Okay, Terry, and congratulations to you and
Yes.
Sue. It's an amazing display, and I know you've had a lot of interest from people
Yeah.
walking by.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
He's going to be in so much trouble calling Sue Granny, isn't he?
Oh, he
That's
is, yes.
dreadful.
What's that? I didn't really get that. So what's the deal?
Well,
there?
it was a while ago. If you remember, we did one of our YouTube videos, a Pots Trowels video at the Harrogate Spring Flower Show with their grandson Harry, who was the youngest exhibitor with his
the
auriculars.
youngest exhibitor, yes.
And I think, referred to "Does your granny help?" And I don't think Sue likes to be called Granny, so Terry now uses that term.
So now she's Granny Sue.
Exactly,
forevermore.
yes.
dear.
Careful, yeah. You've got to be careful what you say about what you like.
Exactly,
And I noticed you were very, wanted by another fly past. We've had this in a few podcast
Yeah.
recordings where you've either having a fly past or somebody rattles by with a trolley. But were the red arrows there for the show?
I'm not 100% sure. I would imagine they were, but bearing in mind that.
Did you look up?
I missed them. I
Oh,
was
right.
working. I was prepping.
Bear in mind where the Lincolnshire Showground is only a few miles from where they're based, but they did fly literally over us. So I think it was a fly past for
I'm
the
sure it
Lincolnshire
was.
Show.
I mean, for international viewers, the Red Arrows are a display team from the.
That's
Royal
right,
Air
yeah,
Force.
and they were there.
So they often fly over stuff with red, white, and blue.
Did they have the smoke
billowing
trails
out.
when you saw them?
Do you know, I can't remember. I was trying to talk to Terry, but they were the full 9. It was the full squadron. It wasn't.
They often do just
They were just in a
V.
V shape,
Yeah.
yes. And we,
Next time, open your eyes and have a look.
yeah, exactly. Well, we see them quite because we live in the area. We see them regularly training, so
Yeah.
it's a common occurrence for us to see them. So, but it was lovely.
It's lovely.
If only we had a video
Yes,
podcast,
yes.
we could have pointed the camera up in the air, and then we would have had something a bit special. You chat about all sorts of things, hydrangea and salvia, and all. Sounded like he had quite a lot going on that.
He did.
was lovely.
It was really beautiful. I mean, Sue put it together the day before. Terry is there as the sales. He does build displays as well. But it was that very much, as I mentioned in the interview, quintessential English cottage garden. It had got lovely perennials, these lovely summer perennials. There were roses, there were hydrangeas, some other shrubs for foliage. And it was just like a lovely full border that you'd expect at this time of the year. So, yes, it got a lot of attention from lots of visitors, so well done to them.
The rose sounded lovely, didn't it? That really, what was it called? The sweetie pie.
yes.
That's the one.
The-
yeah.
Small football size. I was trying to imagine a small football size plant. I mean, the Euros are on at the minute with
Yeah.
the football, and I thought it was quite a nice little link. I'm just
Yeah.
imagining.
Yeah.
Problem I have with footballs is more about them being kicked at.
Yeah.
Oh, right, yes.
So having,
Yeah.
having the
In fact,
two
I'm
boys
hoping
at
to
it.
ask at some point. Yeah, I'm going to ask a question about how people ask about how to deal with slugs and snails. I'm wondering about how you deal with like footballs belting.
You
into
simply
monsters
hide
and
the football. When they're in bed, you get the football and you hide it somewhere. When they come down in the morning and say, "Dad, have you seen my football?" I say, "I haven't seen it,
Yeah.
sorry."
I think it's in the park.
Yeah, and then exactly, yes, then they'll get used to not having it. Yeah, but no, lovely display, and a very unusual rose as well, because the flowers were tiny, about the size of your little fingernail.
And it was full of flowers. wasn't it?
Absolutely. So
Full of
yes,
flowers.
it's a dainty one, but beautiful.
Yeah. Could you not find a space for one in our garden?
Um,
It's not like you not to come home with a
we
plant.
could do. I just feel it's a little bit small, actually. I think it's a great one for a container or a smaller
Yeah.
garden, but I think in a big border it would be
Yeah.
lost unless you had a group of them.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. Well, you chatted to Terry, who is fascinating. We ought to do a whole podcast on Terry with some of his stories of being a fireman. I know when we're at the shows, he often will sort of tell us a story about his fireman days and his dealings with horses. So, but you did get a chance to chat to another exhibitor as well, didn't you?
John, then, how did you originally get into growing and horticulture?
So we started our business from a back garden in London. I used to work in the financial banking sector, and when the banking collapse happened in 2008, I was made redundant, and I decided to start a new career path.
Right.
So I trained with KLC School of Design in Chelsea, studied at Hampton Court, and started up my own business in 2009. Initially as garden design, But then I started growing for my designs because I could never find reasonable plants in London.
So if you said you started from your back garden, presumably London, the gardens are fairly small, so it would have been quite tight for growing in there.
It was 200 foot, but it's amazing how many plants you can get in 200 foot.
Yeah. So then how did you move on? Because now you're in Lincolnshire, so how did that all come about?
So as I say, when we started, we were just in our back garden. We then rented a little bit of space in Enfield behind a garden centre. And we did a couple of RHS shows and were filmed back in 2015, and that kind of catapulted the business into a different stratosphere. So we needed a lot more space, and we decided we wanted everything on site rather than spending an hour and 25 each way. So we looked for somewhere where we could have the nursery and our home in the same place, and the only place that we found suitable was Lincolnshire. And that's where we landed in 2015.
Yeah, so you're down in this Spalding area, aren't you? Very fertile growing ground as well, known for horticulture and agriculture down there.
Absolutely. The nursery is actually on one of the old tulip fields. So super fertile soil. And yeah, it's just a glorious spot.
Sounds idyllic. So tell us what you grow. What are your specialities?
So I've never liked to be pigeonholed into just one thing. So we do have the national collection of achilleas, but we also grow medicinal and culinary herbs, and then we specialise in plants for pollinators. So anything that's going to bring the bees, the butterflies and the insects into your garden.
And I know on the exhibits you've done at various shows over the years, pollinators and getting the bees in is a big theme of your exhibits as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. We're organic growers as well, so we don't use any chemicals, pesticides in the nursery. We're determined to try and bring more and more wildlife into people's gardens in a natural way.
Yeah, that's good. So the achilleas, I think that's one of the things you got started with because you've got the national collection. We've got some achilleas here. So just describe achilleas and tell listeners all about achilleas and why they should grow them in their garden.
So the fancy name obviously is achillea, but most people will know it as yarrow. You'll normally see it growing wild at the side of motorways. It's the little white flower that pops up everywhere, sometimes turns a little bit pink, used a lot medicinally, but has been cultivated for a long, long time now. And you can literally get an achillea in almost every colour apart from blue and purple. They've got flat flower heads, a bit like an umbel, and they have made up of tiny, tiny little daisy flowers. So they're part of the Asteraceae family, one of the biggest flower families. And the pollinators love them. So short-tongued bees adore them, so do butterflies because they can land on them. They use the flathead as a bit of a launching pad so they can get down there, have a drink and an eat, and then off they take again. And it also brings in another army into your garden, which is the parasitic wasps, as they love to nest underneath the flower heads.
Right, and they come in all different sizes, lower ones, tall ones, different colours. So I suppose regardless of what size garden you've got, there's an achillea that will suit.
Absolutely. You go from 20 centimetres up to almost 2 metres, pretty much, as I say, all the colours of the rainbow, and they work in all different settings. So if you've got like a prairie style or a wildflower, brilliant, but they also work in cottage garden. And even if you're someone that's got like a simplistic gardening look, just pots and containers, they look great in those too.
Yeah, and they're a perennial, so they're going to come back every year. Do you need to divide them every few years, or can you just leave them to get on with it?
They'll create a clump really quickly. They'll split and divide super easy. They're a drought tolerant plant, so they don't have a taproot. So if they're in the ground, they're really easy to lift, divide and split.
Okay, so it's a good one. And in containers, working containers?
Perfect for containers, yeah.
So everybody should have an achillea by
Definitely.
the sound of it. But you've also got lots of other lovely cottage garden plants. So at the nursery, you're propagating and growing, and as well as shows, are you open to the public?
So we have open days throughout the year. We say open by appointment, which sounds very posh. It's not really. It's just that we're a working nursery, so you can come at any time as long as you let us know when you're coming.
Okay, that's great. Well, the stand you've got here at the Lincolnshire Show looks lovely. You've got some amazing plants here. Sun's shining, so I hope you have a busy day.
Thanks, Martin. Great.
Thank you, John.
So it seems to me achillea are like the perfect plant, right? They are drought tolerant, split easily, lift easily. What's not to like,
Yeah,
right?
in the gardening containers.
Yeah, they are, and there are some really lovely colours from very pale pastel colours to some really deep reds and sort of almost maroon colours. So they fit in with every scheme. I mean, they are obviously summer flowering, so they're not flowering all year round, and they're herbaceous, they die down. But for, a few months in the summer, they're great mixed in with a herbaceous border and in between shrubs. And perfect, as John says, for pollinators and bees. So yeah, they're a really good one for the summer.
We need to take the camera to John's nursery, don't we, and do some filming there, because it sounds like a fascinating place, and so great that they are majoring on the sort of pollinators as well, and getting really sort of getting those bees going.
Yeah, they've always done that. I mean, when they're at the shows, they've been at Chelsea and all the shows over the years. They always concentrate on building displays with lots of pollinator-friendly plants in it. So they are passionate about that side of it. And, hence the reason...
And organic
as well. And that was all part of the move in from London up to Lincolnshire, so they could have more space and start a nursery where they could live. So they've done really well for themselves.
And the medicinal plants as well. That's something that I'm really interested in. So yeah, we'll definitely have to take the camera over there.
And it sounds like he's, making amends for years in banking.
Yes.
Well, exactly, yes. We can't blame him for that.
We don't want to cast aspersions or anything, but,
What a contrast in careers, isn't it? If you're in a city banker, living that life, all very different in London, and then, all of a sudden you're in, the open countryside in South Lincolnshire.
Yeah.
It is completely different for both of them. I'm not sure what line of work Hugh did before the nursery, but now he's very much involved with the nursery, and he builds the stands. The one at the Lincolnshire Show, it was Hugh that was building it while John was getting the sales ready. So, yeah, they've got a lovely working relationship and built a very successful business.
Well, I think it's time for a listener's question. And remember, if you've got a listener's question, because you're a listener and you're listening now, so clearly you're a listener before you've got a question. So I'll get through it in a minute. Drop us an email, info@potsandtrowels.com. So we've had an email through, haven't we?
We have, from Matthew Robertson, who's asking about camellias and raising camellia from seed. So he says he has a number of them, various sizes and varieties, which seed well most years. They are of sentimental value, having been in the family for some generations, but he'd really like to start new plants from seed, accepting that they may not be true to the parent variety, but fun to do nonetheless. Each year I manage to get good seedlings sprouting with long tap roots. These he plants into ericaceous compost. They look quite impressive for the first year or so, but then he seems to lose every single one of them. Oh no, Matthew. I've tried adjusting various variables, he says, like the amount of light, water, etc., but simply haven't managed to land on the correct combination to keep them happy. He's had them inside a greenhouse as well as outside, but they all seem to turn brown and fail within 2 years. He'd be very grateful if you could share the secret recipe for keeping them happy.
Well, I think you've actually done the hard bit, Matthew, which is getting them to germinate. I mean, very often camellias do produce seed, and they almost look like the seed pods, look like little mini apples or crab apples are on the plant, and people say, what are they? Is it a growth? Well, it's the seed pod, and the seeds are inside it. So you've done the hard bit, which is germinating them, because they need a period of cold. And I can't understand why they're only living for 2 years, because if you've got them in a pot, I mean, this is exactly how people raise new hybrids. They cross-pollinate 2 parent plants, take the seed off and grow them in containers. I don't know. I mean, whether it's the compost, they like moisture retentive compost, but they don't like to be too wet. So I'm just wondering whether in the winter they are getting wet. They could probably do with a little bit of protection, but they don't particularly mind the cold. It's more the rain. So you mentioned you've got a greenhouse, maybe a greenhouse over winter, and dry them out a little bit, not completely, but just so the compost is moist but not soggy. If they're going brown, that is usually an indication of too wet or too dry.
I've heard the term ericaceous compost before, and I remember back that John, your former kind of old mucker who we did filming with, mentioning that, camellias thrive in ericaceous compost. Is that acidic compost?
Yes, exactly. I mean, camellias are one of those plants that like it slightly acidic in the soil. They're not as...
Can it be too acidic?
Well, it could be, because, rhododendrons need it very acidic. Camellias will stand it sort of almost neutral. We get neutral soil, we get acidic soil, and alkaline, which is the calcium content. So it might be worth, instead of trying them just in ericaceous compost, mixing it with an ordinary compost, Matthew, so it's sort of weakened it a little bit. And maybe just a little bit of liquid feed when they're going in the summer. Just give them a little bit of a liquid feed just to promote that growth. It's all about building up a root system. So I can't see anything that you're definitely doing wrong, and there's certainly no secret. You're doing everything right. So I think just persevere, and hopefully some will pull through. And I think once they've got established after a year or two, hopefully then they'll grow away, and within a few years after that, you'll start to get some flowers.
Well, keep us posted,
Yeah,
Matthew. Let us know.
interesting.
Yeah, we'd like to hear about those. We have a decent camellia in the garden, but we had 2 camellias and one went brown and died, and it was in a pot. Whereas our one that is thriving is in the ground. So maybe that's an option as well.
Yeah, maybe it's if you've got a bit of room in the garden, maybe after a year plant a few out and just see how they do in the garden. And I think you've just got to be a little bit experimental with them, and check you're not overwatering or underwatering, and give them a bit of shade in the hot sun and that type of thing.
Sounds as if he's sort of doing all those things,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
it does.
But it's just persevering, I think,
Yes.
isn't it? Okay.
Good luck with it. Good luck.
Right, while we were at the Lincolnshire Show, we actually did a Pots and Trowels video, didn't we? So we thought we'd just show you a few of the nurseries that were there, including Terry and John's, of course. And we had a bit of a chat with Terry. So if you want to see some of the plants that were on his exhibit, then you can watch the video. But one of the things that we did as well, we did our talk, didn't we? Our gardening on the menu talk.
We did, yeah.
And I did a quick recipe with spring onions. And spring onions, I'm flying the flag for spring onions because I think they are highly underrated and abused, really. We all buy a bunch from the supermarket, bung it in the salad drawer at the bottom of the fridge, forget about it completely, and then come back 3 weeks later and they're all dried up and shriveled and we end up throwing them away. So but they're very good for you, high in fibre, which is good for your digestion. They're antibacterial, antiviral, so they help fight against the cold.
There's nothing wrong with them, is there? They're all good.
Absolutely. Vitamin A, vitamin K, vitamin C, it's endless.
Can I ask, are spring onions just onions that you pick earlier, or are they actually different varieties?
Good question. Well, they are different variety, and actually some people call them salad onions rather than spring onions. I think spring onions is a bit of an old term because you can have them more or less all year round, to be fair, Sean. So they are related to onions, but they don't make a big bulb like the normal
Just
one.
stays
You've got
straight
that just that's so look, imagine a mini leek, sort of pencil or finger thickness leek.
Yes,
milder flavour than a leek and delicious. So what did you cook with them?
I want to hear the recipes. And also I'm going to ask how far you cut them up, because obviously they get greener and greener. How far
They
do you
do.
go?
They do. Well, that's the advantage of growing your own, you see. You can eat more of them. But yeah, I did just a stir-fry chicken and spring onion dish with some spicy noodles, which Martin was in charge of when we were doing this on the stage. So first of all, I just marinated some chicken, the thigh fillets, which are really nice and moist and tender. Just marinate those in some soy sauce and then leave those to just develop the flavours for an hour or so. Make a quick salsa. So that is really just some chopped up spring onions, a bit of green chilli or red, and then the zest of half a lime and the juice of half a lime. Let that sit while you're making the dish. So heat some oil, fry the chicken and the soy sauce until it's cooked through, and then just put that into a warm dish to keep it on one side. Put some spring onions that you've cut up into sort of bite-sized pieces, so maybe one spring onion cut up into two. Some onion, bit of garlic, bit of ginger. Just cook that until all those aromas are released. Then put your chicken back into the pan, add in a bit of rice wine vinegar or dry sherry, bit of stock, a little bit of sugar, and then cover it and just let that simmer gently so that the spring onions just sort of steam really in all those lovely juices and become really tender. And that's it. And then just heat up some noodles, stir through that salsa that you've made just for a minute or two till the noodles are heated through, and then that zestiness of the lime will really perk up those noodles, and then just serve the two together. So really straightforward, really simple. And I'll put a link to the recipe on our website on the podcast notes, so you can have a go at that. Really nice one.
It is delicious. I mean, we had it 5 days on the trot, 2 days at the Lincolnshire Show, and then 3 days at Harlow Car, and I finished it off, and it's But it's the technique of me putting the zest of the lime in, I think is what gives it
yeah.
that
I think that
certain
probably
je ne
made
sais
it.
quoi.
That's what did it. That's
Marvellous
what did it every
was.
time. But yeah, if you grow your own spring onions, unlike the supermarket ones, the tops are all sort of, it would really a bit leathery. You wouldn't want to eat those. But if you do grow your own and you catch them quite young, then you can just about eat the whole thing, can't
Yeah,
you?
exactly.
Just trim the roots off,
Yeah.
And you can eat all the green bit.
Every bit is
Yeah,
edible.
because when we're doing Chinese, I was going to say we're doing Chinese recipes and it says, cut them. And it's just like, okay, as you go further up, it just gets less and less
Yeah.
appealing.
Yeah, they're
The
just
white
tough.
bit, obviously, the tender bit at the bottom.
But if they're young, very small, then I'd eat the lot. Chop them up as you would do chives and put them on salads and do potatoes and that type
Can we
of
grow
thing.
some now, or have we missed the
No,
boat?
well, that leads nicely on, Sean, because, for a few jobs, perfect, because you can literally sow your spring onions, salad onions, from spring right the way through until early autumn. And if you sow a few seeds on a monthly or 6 weekly basis, you'll have a continual supply. You don't need a lot, so just, a pinch of seed every time you do it. You can do them in containers, you can sow them in the garden. So, now is a perfect time to do it. Lots of different varieties, all absolutely delicious.
And if you go over to watch some of our videos, you can see some discount codes for getting seeds at a reasonable rate. Anyway, we've probably run out of time.
We have. It's all just flown by. But we'll be back again next week doing it all again. So we'll see you then, eh?
Bye.
Bye. Watch the videos on YouTube or Facebook, follow us on Instagram, Twitter or X, and subscribe to the podcast and never miss a thing. For more information, go to potsandtrowels.com.